We begin today's shiur 14 lines from the top of Daf Lamed Zayin. Before we begin the Gemara itself, we glance at the side under our nosei, our topic heading, where we read the following: B'matzav, in a situation, shel sofek ben zayin l'sheni ben tisha l'rishon. In a case where a woman becomes a widow and marries the Yavam, and after 7 months bears a child. Is this child, we should point out that the Yavam did not wait the required 3 months in order to establish whether or not she was pregnant. So after 7 months, there is a doubt. Is this a full-term pregnancy, a 9-month pregnancy? Hence it would be the child of the first husband. And if that be the case, then Yibum was out of the question. Or maybe it's a 7-month child born to the Yavam. Loma lo yamrinon haloich achar horoiv. Why do we not say that we should simply follow the majority? V'have ben shel rishon hames. It's the son of the first husband, the brother that died. The rov nashim l'tisha yoldos. Most women bear their children after a 9-month pregnancy. So the question comes up, as we said, why are we even entertaining the thought that it's a 7-month pregnancy with the Yavam? In the Mishnah, we should point out that when this issue came up, the 7-month pregnancy, so the Mishnah had said that they separate, and the child is kosher, and they're chayav an osham tolui. The osham tolui reflected an element of doubt, but here we don't have doubt. If you follow the majority, so the required sacrifice would be a korban chatos, a sin offering when the sin is clear. And if you follow the rov, the child is a child of the deceased husband, and the Yavam should not have married her whatsoever. So now we turn to the Gemara. Sofek ben tisha v'chulei, and then the Mishnah said v'chayovim ba'osham tolui. The required korban was a korban brought when in doubt concerning an aveira, a sin that would involve a chiyuv kores. Omar lei Rav Rav Nachman. Leima, why not say haloch achar roiv noshim? Follow the majority of women. V'roiv noshim l'tisha yaldan. And the majority of women bear children only after 9 months. So that this would be a child of the first husband, and the Yavam definitely did an Aveira, and let the Korban Chatos be brought based on his having had relations with an Eishesach Shelo B'Mokom Mitzvah, a sister-in-law, where there is no Yibum Mitzvah involved. Omar Lei. So Rav Nachman responds, Noshi didan l'shiva yoldan. Our women give birth after 7 months. Omar lei, Rava says back, Noshi didchu havu ruba di'ama. Are your women representative of the majority of the world? Now we continue with an answer. Rav Nachman answers, and it's a long answer. Take note of the fact that as part of this long answer there's a bracketed section where the contents of the bracket section is language is not accurate, and the Gemara refurbishes it. So initially we'll skip the bracketed section, and let's see Rav Nachman's answer. Omar lei, hochi ko'amina. This is what I mean. Roiv noshim yoldan l'tisha. The majority of women give birth after 9 months. Umiut l'shiva. A minority of women give birth after a mere 7 months. And here we skip the brackets. Roiv hayoledes l'tisha. The majority of women that give birth after 9 months, and again we emphasize the majority of women that give birth after 9 months, ubra nikur lishlish yomeha. The pregnancy, the fetus, is recognizable after a third of the period, after 3 months. V'hai midolo hukur lishlish yomeha, and the case featured in the Mishnah is a case where the Vlad, where the child was not recognizable after a third of the time period. So Isra le Ruba, that weakens the rove, and we therefore come to the conclusion that it's quite possible that it's not a 9-month pregnancy, but rather a 7-month pregnancy and hence a child of the second husband having done a real full-fledged yibum. It would seem to me what the Gemara just described is a situation that even though he didn't wait 3 months to marry her, however, 3 months went by since the death of the brother, the deceased brother. 3 months went by, and the Vlad, the pregnancy, was not recognizable. So, since after 3 months, since the brother's death, the pregnancy was still not recognizable, it arouses the thought that this is a 7-month pregnancy, and hence it's a child of the second husband. Now, let's go over the bracketed section. Rav Nachman said that I acknowledge that most women give birth after 9 months, and a minority give birth after 7 months. V'chol, and we're reading now in the brackets, emphasis on this word v'chol, and all, v'chol hayoledes l'tisha, all women that give birth after 9 months, ubra nikur l'shlish yomea. The child is recognizable after 3 months. V'zu, and the case here of the Mishnah, hayo v'lo hukur ubra l'shlish yomea, since the Vlad was not recognizable after 3 months. 3 months, as we said before, 3 months, let us say, after the husband died, the child was still not recognizable. Isra le ruba, the rove is weakened. In other words, to ascribe this woman to a 9-month pregnancy is weakened. The Gemara asks, if this language is correct, if that were so, that every single woman that gives birth after 9 months, the child is recognizable after 3 months, in this case, that the child was not recognizable after 3 months, ubra vadai bar shiva lebasrohu, then the child is definitely the product of a 7-month pregnancy resulting from the second husband, from the brother, from the Yavam, and she was legitimately married by him, and there'd be no need for a korban whatsoever. And yet the Mishnah speaks about the need for a korban. Elo ema, rather, to speak more accurately, roiv hayoledes l'tisha ubra nikar l'shlish yomel. The majority of 9-month pregnancies are recognizable after 3 months. V'hai midalo hukur l'shlish yomel. And in our case, the Mishnah's case, where after 3 months since the brother's demise, the pregnancy was not recognizable, so Isra le Ruba, the majority is weakened, so she would fit. So we don't ascribe her to the majority, and hence a doubt is created. Tanu Rabbanan. We have a Tanaic source that continues with the issue of child born, and we're not sure who the father is. Is it the first brother, or the deceased's child, or the Yevam's child? Tanu Rabbanan, Rishon Roy Lios Kohen Gadol. The first child born, either way you look at things, is fit to be, and this is a figure of speech, but he's totally kosher. He'd be, if he were the son of Kohanim, so he would be fit to be even the Kohen Gadol. either way you look at things, meaning if he's a 9-month pregnancy, it's a legitimate child from the deceased husband. And if it's a 7-month pregnancy, so it's a legitimate child of the Yavam, the first husband having left no other children. V'sheni mamzer misafek. The second child that's born, if this Yavam, if he continues with her, it's true the Mishnah said they must separate, but if a second child is born, so he's called a mamzer misafek. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yankov Omer, ein mamzer misafek. Now this source is not 100% clear. What is meant by a mamzer misafek? What is Rabbi Eliezer trying to accomplish when he says there is no such thing as a mamzer or as a safek mamzer? In order to deal with this source, we have a machloikis, Abaye and Rava. On the side of the Gemara under the Mivneh heading, you can see a triangle. These are gishos, the approaches of Abaye and Rava. Lahasbir Hadamar Rabbi Eliezer ben Yankov ein mamzer misafek. What did Rabbi Eliezer ben Yankov mean when he says there's no mamzer misafek? My Komar. As we said, this source needs explanation. How can Rabbi Eliezer ben Yankov say that there's no doubt? What do you mean there's no doubt? We see a woman that didn't wait her required 3 months, married the Yavam, 7 months later a child is born. How can you say that the second child born after that is not a safek? Of course there's a safek. If this child, the first child, was a 9-month pregnancy from the first husband, then the Yavam that married her now should not have married her. And if he did, any children that he produces with her are going to be mamzerim. Let's continue. Omar Abaye, Hochi Komar. Rishon Roy Leos Kohen Gadol. So Abaye says, let's read the source thusly. The first child is fit to be a Kohen Gadol, as we explained. There's no question about that first child. V'sheni, if that Yavam continues living with her, Safek Mamzer, V'osur B'Mamzeres. A second child to be born is categorized as a possible Mamzer. Once again, if the first child was a 9-month pregnancy, then this Yavam shouldn't have continued living with her and bearing children. So that child, if the first child was a 9-month pregnancy, the second child is a possible mamzer. You see, if the first child was a 7-month pregnancy, so then this would not be any problem. But we don't know. Hence, it's a safek mamzer, and the Tanna Kama says he cannot marry a mamzeres, a woman who is definitely a mamzeres. A mamzer is someone who results from a union of people that are usur, that are forbidden to one another. And certainly, if their union would carry with it a penalty of correlate, so the child produced, in almost all cases, except for nida, the child produced would be called a mamzer. So the second child from the Yavam who married the Yevama within 3 months, the second child that he bears is called a safek mamzer, as we explained already at length. That child, according to the Tanna Kama, cannot marry a mamzeres, a girl who is definitely a mamzeres. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yankov Omer, Eino safek mamzer, ela vadai mamzer, umutur b'mamzeres. He is not considered like a safek. He's considered like a vadai. When he says here ela vadai mamzer, it's like a vadai mamzer, and halachically speaking, that classifies him as mutter, as being allowed to marry a mamzeres. Rashi takes pains to explain this. V'sheni mamzer vadai. Actually, let's see. Rabbi Eliezer Omer ein mamzer misofek elo kevadai mamzer have umuter b'mamzeres. The kosovar sveikon bevadon muter. That's Rashi's presentation of Rebbe Elazar, that we don't consider him like a suffix, but rather like a definite mamzer, even though technically he is a suffix, he is a doubt, but we consider him halachically, legally, like a definite mamzer, and he is muter to marry a mamzeres. He can marry another one like him. And Rebbe Elazar is of the opinion that doubtful ones can marry with definite mamzerim. For those who might not be familiar, these illegitimate children, and illegitimate in Judaism is in this context of child born through a union of people that are highly forbidden to be with one another, as we explained, to the tune of a kores level offense. There are other opinions in Tanoim on this topic, but we're using the common accepted opinion. Continuing in the Gemara, Rava Omar, Hochi Ka'omar, Rishon Roy Lios Kohen Gadol. And this has been the same throughout. V'sheni, the second child born, Mamzer Vadai Misofek, Umuter B'Mamzeres. Since he is like a suffix, or since he is a suffix, we view him as if he's a Vadai Mamzer and allowed to marry a Mamzeres. This is Rava's presentation of the Tana Kama. This is the opposite, if you will, of Abaye's presentation of the Tana Kama. So Rava's presentation of the Tana Kama more lenient for this particular suffix character. For Rebbe Elazar ben Yankov Omer, Ein Vadai Mamzer Misofek Ela Sofek Mamzer V'Oser B'Mamzeres. And here Rava presents Rebbe Elazar ben Yankov as being strict, restrictive, similar to Abaye's presentation of his Tana Kama. Now the Gemara makes a point. There's a long point here. V'komifligi b'derebi Elazar. Abaye and Rava, in dealing with Rebbe Elazar ben Yankov, is he restrictive or is he lenient? So their machlokes is dependent on Rebbe Elazar, as we will see now, and it takes quite a bit of Gemara in order to develop the theme, what their machlokes, Abaye and Rava, are based on. But in order to focus the discussion, we can focus on Rebbe Elazar ben Yankov. Is he restrictive or is he lenient with regard to how to deal with a suffix mamzer? So we continue. V'komifligi b'derebi Elazar. Abaye and Rava are arguing within Rebbe Elazar, not to be confused, by the way, with the Tana Rebbe Eliezer ben Yankov. Disnan Rebbe Elazar Omer, Vadon b'Vadon muter. Definite mamzerim are muter with other definite mamzerim. Vadon b'Sveikon, Usveikon b'Vadon, Usveikon b'Sveikon Aser. However, where you have any other combination, a suffix mamzer with a vadai, or even two suffix mamzerim, they cannot marry one another. Now, two suffix mamzerim cannot marry one another because we say suffix about the fellow. Let's say he is a real mamzer. The girl, the woman, as a suffix, she might be totally kosher. So we can't have them mating. V'elu hein sveikon. And the following are examples of suffix mamzer. Shtuki, v'asufi, v'kusi. These are topics that are elaborated on in the fourth last parak of Maseches Kiddushin, so we don't want to dwell on them right now, but these are people, the Shtuki and Asufi are people who don't know who their father or both parents are. So, being that they don't know, it could be that they are the products of a mamzer situation. The Kusi, these are people that had a, let's say, questionable conversion to Judaism many years ago, and they are not makbid. They are not concerned with kiddushay, kesef, and shtar. marriage through money and marriage through shtaros, because in order to establish that is a form of marriage, you have to rely on the oral tradition, and they don't accept the oral tradition. And as a result, they could have someone amongst them marrying by offering money and not taking it seriously, and then that woman would go ahead and marry someone else. So, as far as we are concerned, she's an Eishes Ish. She's forbidden to be married by someone else. They are not concerned, so within the Kusi population, you will have Safek Mamzerim. The Omer Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Halacha Rebbe Elazar. Rav rules like Rebbe Elazar. Now, Rebbe Elazar is clearly on record as saying that a Safek with a Vadai is not allowed. Ki Amriso Kamei de Shmuel. This is Rav Yehuda speaking. Rav Yehuda says, when I said this over to Shmuel, in other words, I said over Rav's very restrictive psak, Omar Li, Shmuel then told me, he said, wow, how can Rav paskin so rigidly when you have the following information on record? Hillel, the great Hillel, Shana, he taught the following. He introduces all different types of members of the population, Asora Yuchsin Olu Mibavel, 10 different categories of genealogy came back in the time of Ezra from Bavel, from the Babylonian exile. And who are the 10 different groups of people? Kahani, Levi, Yisraeli, those are clear. Chaloli, Geri, Haruri. Chalolim are people that are born from a Kohen who marries a divorced woman. Geri are converts. Haruri are slaves that were freed. Mamzeri, Nesini, Shtuki, Vasufi. Mamzerim, that's clear, the children born from illegitimate marriages, illegal marriages. And Nesini is a reference to the Nesinim. These are people that don't keep the oral tradition. They were part of the group of people that converted in the time of Yehoshua. And Shtuki Vasufi are people who don't know who their father or parents are. V'chulan mutaron lavoi zeh bozeh. And all of them, now here you have to be very careful with the translation, but amongst these groups, when you subdivide them into separate groups, they can marry with one another. And Rashi explains this in detail. But what's of interest to us is the last group that Rashi mentions. If you look across from this in our marked Gemara, you see there's a little gimel in the Rashi. Geri, Haruri, Mamzeri, Unesini, Shtuki, Vasufi, Mutaron Zebozeh. That's what Hillel teaches, as Shmuel points out. And why is it that the Shtuki and Asufi, which are Safek Mamzerim, they can marry known Mamzerim, and likewise Gerim, converts, can marry Mamzerim? To Kahal Gerim lo ikri Kahal, Lefikoch Mamzerim mutaron bohen, ukeseder zeh shnuyim bekidushin. Okay, that's giving us a little more detail than we need for right now. But according to Hillel, as Shmuel says, Safek Mamzer can marry a Valai Mamzer. V'at Amris, we're continuing the Gemara. V'at Amris halacha Rebbe Elazar, and you, that's quoting Rav as saying that the halacha shall follow Rebbe Elazar, who would restrict that. In other words, you have on the one hand Hillel that allows a Safek to marry a Vadai, and how can you choose to rule like Rebbe Elazar over the towering authority figure of Hillel, who was lenient? And now the Gemara ties this information into Abaye and Rava from before. Abaye sovar lo kishmuel, the Omar halacha ki Hillel. Abaye accepts Shmuel, who says that you should rule like Hillel. Now that means that the halacha would be Safek is mutter with a vadai. And as a result of that, umuki law Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov aliba de Hilchasa, he sets up Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov as holding like that. If you go back to Abaye's version of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, he was in fact saying that a suffix is mutter with a vadai. So as to avoid having a contradiction in the rules of how to paskin halacha, how to rule halachically. So, as far as Abaye is concerned, we know that we paskin like Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov, and we also know that the halacha should follow Hillel. So if you want to make sure that the halacha, that Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov is in line with Hillel, who is this, as we said, this towering legal authority, so we set up Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov as holding like Hillel. Rava savar lo kerav. Rava holds that the halacha, he holds by Rav's conclusion. Diamar halacha k'Rebbe Eliezer. That the halacha should follow the restrictive ruling of Rebbe Eliezer. Umuki law l'Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov aliba dehilchasa. And as a result of accepting Rebbe Eliezer, we want to make sure that Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov, who, when he says something, is something to be accepted, so we want to have Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov paralleling Rebbe Eliezer. Hihechi delo tikshi hilchasa ahilchasa, so that we don't have a contradiction in halacha principles. So just to go over this once again, according to Abaye says that Shmuel's approach is more correct, and Shmuel preferred Hillel. So once you say that halacha is like Shmuel, that means that a suffix is going to have to be mutter with a vadai. And we know that we follow the ruling of Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov when he appears in the Tanaic sources. So we want to make sure that Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov, according to Abaye, is also lenient, allowing suffix with vadai. Rava, on the other hand, says that the halacha is to follow Rav, and Rav ruled like Rebbe Eliezer. So we want to make sure that Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov, as we said, when he appears, he is to be followed. So he has to come out saying the restrictive approach, as we saw in Rava's presentation. We continue at the top of Amud Beis. Omar Abaye, Mino Amino Law, the Cholsfeiko, the Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov Kevadai Mashvilei. From where do I know that according to Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov, matters that are a suffix, we're talking about matters of genealogy, of genealogical purity, that where a doubt arises, Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov will categorize that as a definite problem, resulting in Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov being matir a suffix with a vadai. Tesanya, Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Hare shebo al noshim harbe. Imagine a person who is promiscuous and he has relations with lots of women. V'ein yodea al eza mehen ba, and he doesn't know which women he cohabited with. V'chein he shebo alel anoshim harbe. Likewise, from her standpoint, she was niv'eles. She had intimacy with many men. V'ein yodas me'eza men kibla, and she doesn't know from whom she became pregnant. If you're in a situation like that, nimtza av nosei es bito, v'ach nosei es hachoso. You'll end up a man marrying his daughter and not knowing that, and a brother marrying his sister, not knowing that they are brother and sister. V'nismale kol ha'olam kulo mamzerim, and the world becomes filled up with mamzerim. Now we have to emphasize here that you're dealing with a situation of doubt. In other words, this could be. And yet, Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov is saying, these are mamzerim. So you have a situation of something that's a suffix being called a definite mamzer. Ve'al zeh ne'emar, and regarding this situation, umola ha'aretz zima. The world is filled with promiscuity and with immorality. So that Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov is telling us that a suffix is like a vadai, and hence a suffix is mutter with a vadai. That was Abaye's approach, and hence this is why Abaye quoted this. Now, the Rava Omarlach, from Rava's standpoint, though, Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov doesn't say that a suffix is like a vadai, so he will tell you, Hochi Ka'omar, the pasuk that Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov quoted is indicative of mere doubt. The word zima in the pasuk, zu ma hi, all it indicates is that, literally, she, who is she? We don't know if she is a vadai. We don't know. It's a suffix. In other words, we have a doubt. So that Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov, as far as Rava is concerned, is not saying that which is a doubt is considered like a vadai. As we go on in the Gemara, we have a marking that draws our attention to the note on the side under the Mivneh. Oid midivrei Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov beinyonei ishus. More comments of his regarding matters of marriage. Yeser al Kain Omar Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov. Furthermore, Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov said, Rashi explains on the third line from the top, Yeser al Kain da'afilu hacha da'al yedei nisuin havei v'adavar mefursam gozar Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov. Up till now, we saw Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov talking about a world of promiscuity. This is a cohabitation without matrimony. Here, we will speak about marriage. Things are known, and yet Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov is opposed. So, we continue. Yeser al Kain, even more so. Omar Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov, Lo yisadam isha b'medina zu, v'yelech v'yisa isha b'medina acheres. A man should not legitimately marry a woman in one area, one region, and then go and marry a woman in another region. Shemo yizdavgu zeh lo zeh. The children of these two unions might end up meeting one another someday. V'nimtza'ach nosei es achoso, and the result would be a brother is marrying his sister. The Gemara asks, Amy, is that really so? The HaRav, here we have two incidents. We have with Rav, and next one with Rav Nachman, whose names we squiggle underline, don't seem to be bound by Rebbe Elazar ben Yaakov's restriction. The HaRav, ki ikla ledar deshir, Rav, when he traveled from his home and went to the community of Dardashir, Machriz v'Omar, he would announce before his arrival, Man havya l'yoyma, who will be my wife for a day? Rav Nachman ki ikla l'shachansiv, when Rav Nachman would visit the community of Shechansiv, and I think that we have to note that these are communities that are distant from where they lived. So Rav had a wife in his own community, and now he's going to have a wife in Dardashir. Rav Nachman had a wife in his own community, and now he's going to have a wife in Shechansiv. So when he would plan a visit to Shechansiv, Machriz v'Omar, he would announce ahead of time, Man havi l'yom, who will marry me for a day? So as a result of these called wife for a day marriages, children might result. And the child that was born in Dardashir might one day meet a child of the opposite gender in Rav's own location. Likewise with Rav Nachman, a child born in Shechansiv might one day end up meeting a child born in Rav Nachman's own locale. And he didn't seem to be bothered by the chashash of ach noisei asachos, a brother marrying a sister. The The Gemara answers, Shiny Rabbanan, the case involving these great rabbinic figures like Rav and Rav Nachman is different. Depakia Shmayu, their names are very well known, which means that a child born from a union involving Rav or Rav Nachman, the child will be associated with them, so that a child born from the wife for a day in Dardashir from Rav, that child will be known as Rav's son, and obviously the daughter of Rav in his own location is known as Rav's daughter, so they will know to avoid one another. Now, we didn't explain in the context of our Gemara what do we mean by wife for a day and why did they do that. That's discussed elsewhere. We can say briefly that these men were very pious and wanted to avoid any even thoughts, let alone actions, avoid any thoughts of immorality, so that when they're visiting a location and they're away from their wives, so as to avoid any element of impurity, they would arrange to have a second wife waiting for them in the place that they're visiting. The Gemara asks a technical question, but how does this even work? They're having a wife prepared for them in these locations. Rav is going to come to Dardashir, Rav Nachman is going to come to Shachatziv, and he's going to say, who wants to be my wife for a day? How is that going to result in even their uniting with one another? V'amar Rava, Tavu alinose, when a man seeks out the consummation of a marriage with a woman, v'nispaisa, and she agrees, tzricha leishev shivanikim, they must observe, the woman must observe 7 clean days because of the emotional feelings as a result of being sought out to consummate their marriage. There's a fear that she might have a nida, a menstrual release, and she's forbidden to her husband. So Rav and Rav Nachman arriving in town and announcing who will be my wife, and some woman agrees, that's nispaisa, she agrees, she's suspect of experiencing a blood release because of the emotion, the being overcome with emotion. She won't be able to live, they won't be able to cohabit. So how does the whole scenario of a child being born from that wife for a day even get started? The Gemara answers 2 answers. Number 1, Rabbanan shluchayu havu mishadri. The Rabbanan, Rav and Rav Nachman, knowing that they were going to visit these locations, they would send agents ahead of time, making this announcement and acquiring a woman for them 7 days ahead of time. So the woman would experience the emotional charge and the nida release of blood, and when the rabbi came a week later, she was already tahora, she was already purified and could cohabit with him. Let's read that line again. Rabbanon shluchayu havu mishadri umodi lahu. They would send agents ahead of time, and they would arrange already for the marriage, and the woman at that point would have been overcome with the emotional charge, and 7 days later, when the rabbi arrives, they're already able to have relations. V'iboyasema, another approach to this story of in light of Rava's claim that Tavu Elinosin Espaisa Tzricha Shivle Nikim, what would Rav and Rav Nachman have accomplished by coming to town? And here we're taking an approach other than the agent sent ahead, but rather the rabbis arriving initially, there. How would marrying these women help in light of Rava's point? So the second approach is l'Rabbanan Yechudi ba'almahu d'miachdi lahu. Women would be chosen for them to be their wife, and they would not cohabit. It's enough, though, that they would know that they have women that had agreed to marry them. We have to just remind ourselves of what this whole wife for a day was trying to accomplish. It was trying to quiet the let's say impure thoughts that a man might have concerning women, but that wouldn't be the case if he has a wife that's designated for him. So that the Iboyasemo is telling us, and we have to translate what we read, that Eino Doima Misha Yeshlo Pas Besalo, you can't compare someone that has bread in his basket, Lemisha Eino Pas Besalo, as opposed to someone that doesn't have bread in his basket. The idea being that the rabbis who knew that there was a woman that would marry them, that was enough to quell any possible thoughts concerning women, any impure thoughts, even if you're talking about a situation where the day they arrived, they wouldn't have been able to cohabit with them. The goal still would be accomplished. Them knowing that there was a woman ready for them. Tana, Reb Elazar ben Yaakov Omer, Lo yisa adam ishtoi v'daito legarsha. A person should not marry a woman with the intention of divorcing her. Mishum shenemar, as the pasuk says, Al techrash areach hara v'yoshev lebetach itoch. You shouldn't scheme evil to your friend when he thinks he is comfortable with you. So that if one marries a woman, creating the thought that they're going to be a couple for till death do them part, and he is thinking, I'll marry her and I'll divorce her after I marry her, that would be a violation of this. It would appear to me that the case involving the Rabbanan is different, because there they didn't marry the women with the woman thinking that she was going to remain a wife for him permanently. That is what Reb Elazar ben Yaakov was talking about. They already at the outset said, who would be my wife for a day? So as far as those women were concerned, for them, let us just assume that it was such an honor for them to be considered the wife of these great rabbis, even if it's for one day, that they agreed very willingly to that plan. But a woman who thinks she's being married for a marriage that would be a lasting, permanent marriage, at the time that the husband is scheming already to divorce her, that would be a violation of Al Techash Areach Hara. As we continue in the Gemara, the new sugya, you can see there is quite an extensive use of markings and geometric shapes. On the side, under our Nosei Mivneh heading, the Nosei is the topic heading, and the Mivneh, the structural note that we combine into one, you see diamonds and double underlines. Sidra shel Shnayim shebo ladun al, two people that are coming to litigate al nechosim shel, regarding properties of so and so. Before we get into the actual text, just let us survey the Gemara ahead of time. First of all, this marking scheme and we'll say type of discussion will continue a considerable way down Lamed Ches Amud Aleph till the Mishnah that's more than halfway down Lamed Ches Amud Aleph. The diamond, you will see, is used along the way, and it highlights the word Suffolk. The Suffolk, of course, is our Yavam that did not wait the required 3 months, and 7 months after he marries the Yevama, a child is born. Is this child a son, a child, an offspring of the deceased? Or is he a 7-month pregnancy coming from the Yavam, the brother, the surviving brother? So that child is called a suffix, and that's who we'll be referring to throughout the sugya. So the suffix is coming to litigate, is coming to argue or lay claim on property. Who is his baldin? Who is the litigant that's confronting him? So if you look at the double underline, that is what's highlighted each time. So in the first example, you have the suffix and the yavam, and they're coming to argue regarding, and what are they arguing about? Then you look at the triangle. In the first case, nichsei misna, regarding the property of the deceased brother. The second example, you see the suffix and the children, other children of the yavam, that come and litigate over the nichsei misna, the property of the deceased. So the first two cases involve contests concerning the property of the deceased. As you continue through the Gemara, you see case number 3 is a suffix and the bnei yavam, but here they're arguing over a different kind of property. So that you see that cases 1 and 2 have in common the argument concerning the nichsei misna. Cases 2 and 3 have in common the suffix and the bnei yavam coming to argue, but in that case over different property. And the fourth case, you have the suffix and the bnei yavam again coming to argue over still something else. The Gemara then gets into a lengthy discussion concerning case 4. Case 5, you can see on Lamed Ches Lamed Aleph, where the suffix and yavam, that's reflective of the first two cases, the first case I should say, where the suffix and yavam had litigated. Here you have that as well in case 5. In case 6 you have the suffix with the bnei yavam, and case 7 the suffix and the yavam, and case 8 a grandfather with the suffix. In cases 7 and 8 you can see we used a slightly different type of diamond, because though we're highlighting the initial figure in who's coming to argue, but it's not the suffix, it's grandfather over there. Now we go into each case. Case number 1, diamond number 1, suffix v'yavam shebo lachloit benichsei misna. The suffix and the yavam are coming to divide, argue, contest who is the rightful owner of the property of the deceased brother. Suffix Omar, the suffix will claim ano bar misnahu. Be careful, in this Gemara you'll see language in the third person, but it's really a first person expression. So it says, the suffix says, I am the son of the deceased. I'm a 9-month pregnancy child. Hence, my father is the brother that died. Unichsei didihu. The properties, the nichsei misna, they're mine. I inherit my father. The yavam omar, the yavam says, at baroi didi at, you are my son. You were born after 7 months. V'les loch v'lomidi b'nichsi. You have no holding in those properties. You're my son, so you don't have any claim on my brother's properties. Havei momon hamuto b'suffix. Here we have a case of money or property that lies in doubt. Umomon hamuto b'suffix chokim. When you have doubt concerning ownership of property, the halacha demands splitting it. We look at Rashi in the upper part of the narrow lines, momon hamuto b'suffix, she'ein zeh muchzik b'nichsi yoser mizeh. Neither one is more possessing, holding of the properties than the other. Di'im zeh ben hameis, if this child is in fact the son of the deceased, ein liyavam behen klum, the yavam has nothing nothing of the property. Ben hayavam hu, if he's the son of the yavam, ein lo bohen klum, then he has nothing in it, in the property of the deceased. Hilkach ein kan moitzi mechaveroi lahatil olav haraya, because there's another principle in settling monetary claims, and that is when I am trying to remove from your possession of property, then I, as the extractor, it is upon me to bring proof to my claim. But as Rashi is explaining, you don't have someone who is a possessor so as to have the other gentleman classified as an extractor. Neither one has any stronger claim than the other in this case. So that's called Momen HaMutal B'Safek. We have two major principles in solving monetary controversy. One is Momen HaMutal B'Safek, and with that, and in cases like that, we say divide, where there is pure doubt. Neither side has a greater claim or greater possession of it. Then we divide, as opposed to the case where one is considered in having a stronger hold on it, the other one being classified as a motzi, an extractor, and then we say it is upon him, the burden of proof is upon him. We continue with the next case. Sofek uvnei yavam shebo lachloik benichse misna. There's a little diagram that we have to the side where the star appears. There is a Ruvain and Shimon were brothers. Ruvain dies in this case. Shimon is a yavam. There's a child, we don't know, it's called Suffolk, we don't know to whom he is ascribed. Is he the son of Ruvain or Shimon? Shimon has other sons. They are coming to litigate over the property of Reuven. So now, let's see each one's claims. We continue in the Gemara, third wide line in the middle. Sofek Omar. The Sofek says, Hahu Gavra. That means that man. He's referring to himself. As we said, the use of the third person in this Gemara should be scrutinized, who is really being referred to. So the Sofek says on himself, Bar Misnahu V'nichsi Didi Hu. I'm the son of Ruvain, and hence I inherit my father Ruvain. B'nei Yavam Amri, the sons of the Yavam say, At Achinu At. You are our brother. Ruvain didn't have any sons. You're our brother. And we should have pointed out maybe earlier that in general, when a brother dies, the Yavam, he inherits the property of the deceased. So here, the Yavam is no longer around for our purposes. The sons of the Yavam would have inherited their father. The sons of the Yavam, in this case, the children of Shimon, are saying to the Suffolk, you're trying to claim all of Reuven's property for yourself on the grounds that you're Reuven's son. No, you're our brother. Umonsa hu deis loch bahadon. And there is, monsa is a portion. You have a portion in that property along with us. We're all together. The Rashi, you'll notice in the upper, again, we're more or less where we left off, Safek u'bnei Yavam, that's a case that we're dealing with now involving the Nichse Misna, HaSafek mufsok b'hem b'yoser. We want to point out that the Safek has a greater claim than the sons of the Yavam. Either way you look at it, he has a holding in it. Either he has a portion of it, or he has all of it. Aval b'nei Yavam Shemo ein lohem chelik bohem. As far as the sons of Shimon, maybe they have no holding in it, because if the Suffolk is the son of Reuven, they have nothing in that property. Shezeh ben Rishonhu. there is a possibility, as we say, that the sons of the Yavam have no holding in, because the suffix might very well be the son of the first one, the dead, the Reuven in our case. V'kulu shelo, and all of it, all the property would be his. Umishum hachi sov rabbanon lemeimar, and it's because of this the Rabbanon thought to say Hainu masnis v'perek noisin alo anusa. Now, what we've done by reading this Rashi, we're giving a little bit of an introduction to the Gemara. So let's go back to the Gemara, and we'll have to pick up this Rashi a little bit later. So we saw the diagram, we saw who's arguing, who's litigating. Now the claims. Sofek, we saw the claims, we're at the fifth wide line, the beginning of line, where you see a crown marking. Under the Mivneh heading on the side of the Gemara, the crown introduces Sovor Rabbanon Lemeimar, and the Rabbanon want to say something to Rav Mesharshia, and a couple lines later you'll see Rav Mesharshia's response to them. So now we continue in the Gemara. The beginning of the line, Sovor Rabbanon Kamei Rav Mesharshia Lemeimar. The rabbis that were in the presence of Rav Mesharshia thought to say that this case, Masnisin, it is in fact a Mishnah. You can resolve the case from that which is taught in a Mishnah. Disnan. Now here we have a Tanaic source, and there's a little diagram that accompanies this too. You can see there's a double star, and let us emphasize, we're not talking about a case of Yibum, but we're talking about a situation where there is doubt. The case described involves children from two men, and there was a woman that had been married to Mr. 1, and she didn't wait the required 3 months, and then married Mr. 2. Mr. 2 has other children. Mr. 1 has other children. I hope everyone sees this in our chart where the double star appears. And now we continue in the Gemara. Hu eino yoresh osam, v'heim yorshim oisoi, v'hacha ibcha. In that case, and actually let's go back to the Rashi now, where we left off. You can find the Rashi pretty easily by finding the double star at the point that we left off. The Rabbanon Kameder of Rav Mesharshia thought to parallel the case that we had, case number 2 with the Suffolk and the Bnei Yavam and the Nichsei Misna, to this case. Let's continue with the Rashi now. We're saying that the case is similar to the that which is taught in the Perek Noisin Alo Anus. That's the name of the Perek later in this Masechta. The Katani, it teaches Safek ben Tisha L'Rishon, Safek ben Shiva L'Achron, a child that is not clear if he's the son of the first man or the son of the second man. Hu lo yoresh osan, lo zeh v'lo zeh. He will not inherit either side. To Bnei Rishon Matchulei, Eitzel Bnei Achron, the sons of the first one will say to the Suffolk, you're not one of us, you're a child of the second man. Bnei Achron, Eitzel Rishon, if the Suffolk tries to inherit property from Mr. 2, they will tell him, those sons will say, you're not one of us, you're a son of Mr. 1. V'heim yorshim oisoi bein shneim. If that suffix dies, so between the bonim of 1 and bonim of 2, they will inherit him. So, but in that case, the suffix doesn't get anything. The Rabbanon that we saw in the Gemara, where it said Sov Rabbanon Kamei Rav Mesharshia, they took that case, which is a Mishnah later in this Masechta. The result of that was that the suffix gets nothing, and then we'll say superimposes that on question or diamond number 2, where also there was a suffix and bonim, and he says the opposite, meaning that in this case the suffix will inherit the properties of the mace, and the bonim of Shimon, the bonim of the Yavam, they will get nothing. So just to go over what they're saying when the Gemara says in the case featured in the Tanaic source quoted from later in the Masechta, the suffix got nothing, the bonim though yes receiving. In our case, diamond number 2, the suffix will inherit and the bonim will not get anything. This is what they, the Rabbanan, wanted to say to Rav Misharshia. The Gemara continues with further with elaboration on this. Hasam in the Mishnah Daf Kufamid Beis Amri Lei, the brothers, the children of man 1 and the children of man 2 in the diagram above where the double star was. In that case, those bonim will tell the suffix, I see Raya Ushkol, you bring proof that you're the son of either 1 or 2, and then you'll have a chance of getting something. But until you can bring proof, we can shove you off. Hacha Omar Luhu. Here in diamond number 2, the suffix says Aisu Raya Ushkolo. You bring proof. He says to the bonim that I am your brother. And we saw before how Rashi presented this. In that case, with namely diamond number 2, the suffix had a much stronger claim on Reuven's property. Either way you looked at things, the suffix had a claim either on all of it or at least on a portion of it. So once again, the Rabbanan, who were in the presence of Misharshia, wanted to parallel diamond number 2 to the Mishnah there later on Kuf Hamid Beis. We continue in the Gemara, the inverted crown. Omar Lahu Rav Misharshia. Rav Misharshia says to them, Mi Dami, how can you compare these cases? Hasam Inhu Vadai V'ihu Safek. In the Mishnah case of Kuf Hamid Beis, the diagram above, when the suffix came to lay claim on the property of 1, let us say, the sons were saying, they were known sons of Mr. 1. That's called they. Inhu is they are vadai. When they lay claim, they're claiming from a standpoint of certainty. They know they know from whence they come. However, the suffix, he doesn't know for sure who's his father. Haha, in our case, idi v'idi suffix. Both are coming with a claim that lacks certainty to it. In our case, diamond number 2, the suffix isn't saying for sure that he's the son of Reuven. He doesn't know for sure. And the bonim don't know for sure that this is their brother. So there's lack of parallel between the cases. Eloi damya the masnisin. If you want to compare one of these suffix claims, a claim to the Mishnah on Daf Kuf Hamid Beis, if you want to set up a case that would be parallel, that where you have one side vadai, one side arguing with certainty, l'ha damya, it would be similar to the following case. This is diamond number 3. L'safek ubnei yavam shebo lachlok b'nichsei yavam gufei. The suffix and the children of the yavam are coming to divide the estate of the yavam. The Yavam, the surviving brother, he had his own children, and he died, leaving his sons, the Bnei Yavam, and there is the Safek. Before we go further, we just glance at Rashi. Benichse Yavam Gufei, that's the case of the Safek and the Bnei Yavam laying claim to the Yavam's properties. Hasa Misukma Masnisen, it's with this case we can set up the case of the Mishnah, or the principle of the Mishnah. Dehu lo yoresh osan. The Safek will not inherit from the Yavam's properties. The Amrile, the Yavam's own sons, will say, I see Rayoshko, you bring proof that you're one of us. Avol be'ahi deliel shnehem Safek. But in the case of the Safek and the Bnei Yavam coming to inherit the Nichsei Misna, both sides were in doubt. Rashi continues with a point that will be very important as the Gemara goes on. So we continue in the Rashi. V'nira be'enai dahi monsa dekamodu lei. In case of diamond number 2, the Bnei Yavam told the Safek that you have something, you have a portion of the properties. That's a portion of the Nichsei Misna. That we're all brothers and our father inherited his deceased brother, and now we're coming to divide the property of the deceased brother. You have a portion in that. So Rashi is referring to that here. He says, Dahi Monsa de Kamodu Lei Shokil. That he takes off the top. Not only does he claim it, but they concede that he claimed all of the properties. They're saying he has a part of the properties. So over that section, there's no argument. The idach have a moment amuta b'safek v'cholkin. The balance of the Nichsei Misna is the doubt, and that they divide. Who notel hachatzi? He, the Safek, will take half of that balance. Ubein kulam hachatzi. The other sons, there might be several of them, they will take the other half of that balance. So at the end of the day, the Safek will be getting more than half of the properties of the mace. So that if you were dealing, let us say, with a piece of property worth $90, so if we talk in value terms, there were 2 sons of the Yavam. So the 2 sons of the Yavam were saying to him, listen, $30 you're going to take off the top, because there are 3 of us. If we count you as one of our brothers, there are 2 of us plus you, that's 3. A third of the $90 of the Nichsei Misna you get off the top. That leaves $60 that is Momon Hamuta B'Safek. And with that would have to be divided. The $60 would be divided in half. So that would leave $30 for the Safek, not forgetting that he already received $30 that they had agreed upon. So he goes out of the picture with $60. The other $30 would then be divided amongst the two sons of the Yavam, each one getting $15, so that you have the Safek getting $60 and the other 2 ending up with $15 apiece. If you add up 2 times 15 plus the 60, there you get to the $90 original value. Now we turn back to the Gemara. We featured here case number 3, which we'll read in the Gemara text. Sofek and Bnei Yavam Shavo Lachlok B'nichsi Yavam Gufei. We read this, of course, before. The Hossam Amri Lei. In that case, they Bnei Yavam will tell the Sofek, I see Raya Da'achuno at Ushkol. You bring a Raya that you are one of ours. You are one of us. Because in this case, in case number 3, they were coming to litigate over the property of the Yavam. And his sons knew for sure that they were his children. And therefore, their taina was a taina of Vadai. The Safek is claiming he's one of them. He's coming simply with a taina that's a Safek. And as we said before, in such a case, so he will get nothing. You say in a case like that, Hamotzi mechavero olav haraya. Safek ubnei yavam, case number 4. The Safek and bnei yavam shabo lachloik benichsei yavam lebasar de polig yavam benichsei misna. So the Safek and the children of the Yavam are coming to litigate over the property of the Yavam after the Yavam had divided the properties of the deceased brother. Namely, we're looking at case number 1. Over there we saw the Safek and the Yavam dividing the property of the mace, and we said over that was Momen Amuta B'Safek. What we see here in case 4, in effect, is a continuation of case 1. So in case 1, the Safek received 50% of the deceased's property. The Yavam received the other 50%. Now, the Safek is confronting the Bnei Yavam concerning the 50% of the deceased's property that the Yavam took. It's a type of, let's say, double dipping, if you will. The Safek already got 50% of that property. Now, and we're just repeating ourselves, now that Safek comes to confront the Bnei Yavam regarding the 50% of the deceased property that their father had taken. So that's what the Gemara means when it says, Shebo lachlok b'nichsei Yavam lebasar de polig Yavam b'nichsei misna. It's the 50% of the property that the Yavam had taken in the deceased's property. What are the claims? Bnei Yavam Amri. The sons of the Yavam say, I see Raya Dachuna Atushko. You bring a Raya that you're one of us. Obviously, in order for the Safek to claim the other 50% that their father had taken, he would have to be claiming that he is one of them. He is one of their brothers. Omar Luhu Safek. The Safek says to them, Manav Shaichu. Either way you look at things, if I am your brother, Havuli Monsa Bahadaichu, I want you have to give me at least a portion of that which your father took. Bar Misno Ano, and if I am the son of the deceased, your father shouldn't have taken anything in the first place. Ano is Havuli Palga to Polag Avuchan Bahadoi. Then you should give me that half that your father had taken when he divided with me. So the Safek seems to have a very strong claim to at least a portion of the property of the deceased that their father had taken. We have names that we've highlighted with a house marking, the names Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Abba Omar Kom Dina. What does that mean? Rashi, Kom Dina, Achar Shenase Din Benichse Hameis. After the Nichse Hameis were originally divided and the Safek got his half, he can't now come and issue a new claim on that property. Umashu shoyel benichse hayavam, and that which he is requesting in the portion that the yavam received, Amri lay, they can tell him, I see Raya, you bring proof that you're one of us. Basically, that the suffix is a motzi mechavero, and then hence he would have to bring proof that he is a brother. That's Rabbi Abba's approach. In other words, that the suffix is out of the picture. In other words, he has no claim on that other half of the deceased's property that the yavam took. Rabbi Yirmiyah Omar Hodar Dina. Rabbi Yirmiyah says the din, the division of the property goes back to the beginning. What do we mean by that? So again, we look at Rashi, Hodar Dina, Umahadri lei palgo denichsi misna. They, the brothers, the sons of the Yavam, will either return half of the properties of the deceased, or polag kulhu nichsi b'shaveh, or they will divide all of the properties equally. So, as far as Rav Yuma is concerned, everything everything goes back to the beginning. You have two choices based on the claims of the suffix. There's a Rashi that we should have looked at earlier, but it's not too late. Just a few lines up. I achuchon ano havuli monso gabaychu. This was the suffix laying claim to the bnei yavam on the half that their father had taken in the deceased properties. V'i mishum deshakli ano palga benichse misna. And so that the suffix is saying, and if you're going to argue against me, claiming that, well, you already got half the properties of the mace, and claiming that I'm the son of the deceased, I have something to tell you, says the suffix. Mahadarna lechu hahu palga. I will return to you that half. V'nachlu kakol b'shaveh. And let's divide everything equally, namely the property of the deceased and the Yavam's property. Bein nichse arisha, bein nichse achron. You'll ask, well, why would someone do that? Why would someone, after having received half of the deceased estate, why would he repool that with the other sons of the Yavam? What interest would the suffix have in claiming that he's one of them, that he's one of their brothers? Rashi answers, Okegain shel nichse hayavam merubin the oviv mu'atin. Just imagine, to illustrate this, that the deceased brother had property worth $10. The yavam, he has property worth $1,000. And the Yavam left a couple sons, 2 sons. It would be very beneficial on the part of the suffix, if the deceased property was worth $10, to repool the $5 with the claim that I'm one of your brothers. I'm a brother with you guys, and then then he would then divide with them property worth $1,000 plus the $10 amongst themselves, the suffix ending up with much more than he originally had. So that when you see this situation of his willingness to re-pool the property, that could make a lot of sense under those circumstances. So, according to Rabbi Abba, the case, the suffix has no claim to begin with, and according to Rabbi Yirmiyah, the suffix has a claim. Either you give me back the half that your father got because I'm the son of the deceased, and if you're claiming I'm one of you, so then I'll be happy to re-pool everything in order to benefit as we just described. So according to Rabbi Abba, we can say that the suffix has no claim. According to Rabbi Yirmiyah, the suffix has a claim. The Gemara now has a question. It's a long question. Leimo beplukto de admoin v'rabbonon komifligi. In order to see the question, though, we're going to have to wait till the end of the long question before it comes to a head. Disnan, a Mishnah from Maseches Ksubis says, Misha halach minas hayam, a person who owned property and he went abroad, and we're going to see shortly that his property is surrounded by other properties. He doesn't have access to the road. He has to cut through some surrounding property. So a person went abroad, the ovdo loy derech sodeo, and he lost the path. It was unclear where the path leading out of his field to the roads that were in the vicinity. So he lost his way out. It became unclear, it became overgrown, whatever. Admon Omar Yelech Biktsora. Admon says that there's an element of doubt here. He has a right to take the shortest path through the neighbor's field to get to the road. The Chachamim say to the landlocked individual, the property is locked amongst the other fields. He says, either you pay a lot of money, that's the idea of pay mea mona, so for our purposes it means a lot of money, or fly in the air before the Wright brothers, so that would be a tough challenge to meet. V'havinon ba. And we look at this machlokas between Admon and the Chachamim, and we ask, L'Rabbanan, according to the approach taken by the Rabbanan, Shapir Ka'omar Admon. Admon seems to be saying something of great validity. Now, the Rashi, at the second line from the bottom, says, Shapir Ka'omar Admon, the Kasalka Daita Shekifu Odom Echad Mikoru Choisov. The Omar Urchei Gabehu. The thinking at this point is that the inner field owner is surrounded by fields on four sides, all owned by one person. So that it's for sure that the landlocked individual had a path through the outside fields owned by the second gentleman. Why would the Rabbanon then insist that the landlocked person pay for a path? He definitely had a path through one of the surrounding, through one of the fields surrounding him. So the landlocked fellow has a definite claim against the owner of the surrounding fields. Why should he have to pay for a path to get out? V'omar Rav Yehuda Rav. We continue in the Gemara. Hocha b'may askinon. The case between Admon and the Chachamim. Kigon shikifu arba b'nei odom me'arba ruchos. There are four fields surrounding him. Those four fields are owned by four different people. My time at Admon. If they're owned by four different people, how can you explain Admon's point where he says he chooses the shortest way out? Well, the owner of that field will say, your path wasn't through my field, it's through the next guy's field. And each one would push him off. So how can you understand Admon if you accept this approach? V'omar Rava. Rava explains, V'arba de'osu mikoyach arba, V'arba de'osu mikoyach chad. If there are 4 fields surrounding him that are owned by 4 people, or you've got 4 fields that are owned by 4 people, let me just say this again. Aleph and Beis are cases where there are 4 fields. The owners of those 4 fields came from having purchased from 4 original owners, or the 4 current owners may have purchased the 4 fields from a gentleman that owned all 4 and divided into 4 separate sections. But in either one of these cases where there are currently 4 owners, Kule alma lo pligi de matsu madchile, everyone agrees, including Admon, that any given owner can push him off, the landlocked fellow. Your path isn't by us, it's by the next guy. If this landlocked guy wants a path, he'll have to pay good money for it. No argument. Ki pligi, when do you see a machlokas between the Chachomim and Admon? Bechad de'osi mikoyach arba'ah. There's a landlocked fellow, and there are 4 fields surrounding him. Right now, those 4 fields are owned by 1 owner. But that one owner, he amassed his real estate by purchasing from 4 original owners of small parcels. He bought, the current owner of the surrounding fields bought 4 small parcels of land, in effect forming a ring around the landlocked individual. So it's, as far as the litigation is concerned, there's a landlocked fellow, one fellow, who's contesting, or is arguing, is litigating against one fellow that owns the 4 fields around him. Admon Savar. Motzi Omar Lei. Admon feels that the landlocked fellow has a claim. Mikol Mokoim Darki Gabochu. My path is in one of these fields. You own all the fields around. My path is through one of them. Rabbanon Savri, the Rabbanon who weaken, who remove any claim from the landlocked fellow, hold the Omar Lei, the owner of the surrounding fields, can say to the landlocked fellow, shaskis, if you keep quiet and we'll come to a settlement, out of court settlement, I'll sell you a path at a cheap rate. Ve'ilo, if you insist on your claim that you definitely have a path through one of these fields, mahadarno shtoro lemarayu, I will I'll sell back, I'll return the deeds of the 4 properties I bought to their original owners, 4 separate people. And you'll have no chance in your claim against them, because each one of them will be able to push you off. So we just featured Admon's analysis and the Rabbanon's analysis. What are we trying to do in this long question? To tie in these 2 points of analysis with Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Yirmiyah from before. Lemo, Rabbi Abba is the one that said that the suffix had no claim. He already received his half of the property of the deceased. That's it, he's out. So we should say, can we say that Rabbi Abba, the Omar Karabonon, that he would parallel, Rabbi Abba was an Amoira, he would fit into the scheme of thought presented by the Chacham, by the Rabbanon, that the landlocked fellow didn't have a claim. That he was on the weaker end of things. For Rabbi Yirmiyah, the Omar Karab Kadmon, and Rabbi Yirmiyah, who said that the suffix had a taina, he would go like Admon, that said that the gentleman that was Mesupik had a strong claim. So just like Rabbi Yirmiyah gives the suffix a claim against the Bnei Yavam in the Nichse Misna that their father had taken, we find that approach taken by Admon, giving the suffix a claim against the owner of the properties surrounding him. So should we say this? And by the way, this is not a comfortable situation for any Amora to be in. What we're suggesting in this question is that Rabbi Abba, who's an Amora, he fits in only to the Rabbanan, not to Admon. And likewise, Rabbi Yirmiyah, he fits in only according to Admon and wouldn't fit into the Rabbanan scheme of thinking. So to this we respond. And again, the house markings highlight Rabbi Abba and then later Rabbi Yirmiyah. Notice the long answer marking, because as we said, this began as a question. Should we say that these Amoraim, each one fit in only to one of the Tanoim present? Omar loch Rabbi Abba, the Gemara continues, Rabbi Abba says back, Ano di Amri afilu ka'admon. My thinking will conform to Admon as well. Ad kan lokmar Admon hasam. Admon said what he did. He said Yelich B'Ktsara, that the landlocked fellow had a claim. Ela mishum di Omerle mi monavshach darki chad gaboch hu. He had what we call a tainas bori, a clear claim. His claim was a solid claim, that whichever way you look at things right now, my path is in one of your fields. We're continuing at the top of Lamed Ches Amud Aleph, in the middle of the line. Avol hacha mi ika lameimar hachi. But in the case of the Suffolk and the Bnei Yavam, do you have either side with a solid claim like that? Rashi says at the second line from the top, Mika lemeimar hochi halo yoda my kotova mine. The Suffolk there doesn't know exactly what he is claiming. I palga benichse misna, I monsa benichse yavam. Is he claiming the half of the deceased's property, or is he claiming a portion amongst the other sons of the Yavam in the property of the Yavam? Umikoach shtei tainis hu bo alehem, and the suffix in that case is coming with two claims. And regarding each claim, they can respond, "You bring a proof." So there, the Rabbi Abba explains that whereas Admon gives the suffix, the landlocked person, not knowing where his path is, but a strong claim that my path is in one of your properties without any question. In the case of the suffix and the Bnei Yavam, that suffix was coming with two claims, each of one was weak, where the other side, the Bnei Yavam, could say, "Oh, you're claiming that? Bring proof." The Gemara continues, second line from the top, Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Yirmiyah Omar Loch, Rabbi Yirmiyah, who gave power to the suffix against the Bnei Yavam, he will say, Ano di Amri afilu l'Rabbanan. My opinion is something that even the Rabbanan, in the fellow who lost his path, could agree with. Ad kan lo kamri Rabbanan hasam. The Rabbanan said what they did. That's only over there where we said that the suffix, the landlocked person, loses out. Elo mishum diyomer le shaskis shaskis. V'lo mahadarna shtor l'marayev lo motzei shtuy dina b'hadayu. That's because the litigant standing opposite him, the owner of the surrounding properties had a very strong counterclaim, saying, if you keep quiet, then fine, and if not, I'll return the deeds to the original owners, and against them you'll have no chance. That's for the Moxis Dina Badai, you'll have no chance to argue, to speak up against them. So there, the Rabbanon say that the landlocked person has a weak claim, and he'll have to pay for a path, because the litigant against him had such a solid threat against him. But here, with regard to the Bnei Yavam, they don't have a way to threaten him, so to speak, as we saw by the owner of the surrounding properties. So as a result of that, Rabbi Yirmiyah feels comfortable in his position, giving the suffix a strong claim, and not having to lose out to the claim of the Bnei Yavam. A new case number 5. Suffix v'yavam shebo lachlok b'nichsei saba. We have a little diagram to illustrate this. There's a grandfather, Yankiv. He had 2 sons, Ruvain and Shimon. Ruvain died. The suffix, we don't know, he's the son of one of these 2, of either Ruvain or Shimon. He's, of course, the suffix, and Shimon, it's either his father or his uncle, are trying to divide or lay claim on the property of the grandfather of Yankiv. Suffix Omar. The suffix says, Hi Gavra, on himself. He says, literally that man that's on himself, he says, I am Bar Misnahu. I am the son of the deceased. Upalga Didi Hu. And half of the grandfather's properties belong to me, because a son takes the place of his father in the laws of inheritance, so that he represents Ruvain. That's his claim. And as such, he gets half of the grandfather's property. Yavam Omar At Baroi Didiat. The Yavam says, you are my son. V'leslach v'lomidi. You have no claim to my father's property, to your grandfather's property. A son inherits his father, not a grandson doesn't inherit the grandfather when there's a father around. Have Yavam Vadai. The Yavam has a definite claim on at least part of Yankiv's properties. The suffix. The suffix at best has only a doubtful claim. He might have nothing in it. He can't say that he has anything definite. V'ein suffix motzi midei vadai. And that which is doubtful cannot take away from or win over someone that has a claim of certainty. Another case, Safek ubnei yavam shebo lachloik b'nichsei sabon. Here too we have a little diagram, the same basic setup. However, we add to this diagram, Shimon has 2 sons. Before we go through the Gemara itself, let's take a look at what we've added underneath the chart. Once again, we're noting that the Safek and the Bnei Yavam are laying claim on the grandfather's property. The Safek is moideh that half, say 3/6 of the property go to the Bnei Yavam. After all, the suffix will be claiming that he is the deceased, the son of the deceased. By saying that he is the son of the deceased, he is putting himself in Reuven's position, acknowledging that half of the property belongs to Shimon and, in this case, his sons. So, the suffix is moida that 3/6 of the property go to them. Another point. What are the Bnei Yavam claiming? They're claiming that the suffix is one of them, is a brother with them. The Bnei Yavam, therefore, are claiming that Shimon had that is, Reuven had no children. You're one of us. So that Yaakov's property went 100% to our father. Our father is gone. There are two of us, and you're one of us. You're one of us. So there are three brothers. So Bnei Yavam moidim b'shlish yesh la safek. Since there are only two, he represents a third. So that they're conceding that a third of Yaakov's properties go to the safek. A third, by the way, is 2/6. So that before you even get to the point of controversy, there are points that both litigants concede to. The suffix is modeh, that they have half. They are modeh, that the suffix has a third. So how much is left to argue over? So if you reduce it to the common denominator, half of the property is also 3/6. They get 3/6 because the one's arguing over that. The suffix gets 2/6. 2 and 3, that's 5/6. What's left to argue over? 1/6. Now that 1/6 then is going to be momen hamuto b'suffix. That's in doubt. So let's now look back into the Gemara. We're at diamond number 6. Safek u'bnei yavam shebo lachlok b'nichsei sabo. Safek omar hahu gavra. He says on himself, bar misnahu. I am the son of the deceased. Upalgo didihu, and 50% of Yankov's properties, of grandfather's properties, come to me. U'bnei yavam amri achuna at. Before we go on with the Bnei Yavam, let's just point out, at that point that the suffix said, I am the son of the deceased, I have half coming to me, the other half is coming to you. That I understand, you get half. Bnei Yavam amri achuna at umonsa isloch bahadon. The Bnei Yavam say, you are one of us, that Reuven didn't have any sons. So that you're not entitled to get 50% of Yaakov's properties. You're one of us, and there are two of us, and there's you. That makes 3 brothers, and therefore, umansa isloch bahadon, a portion which we explained before was a third. That's coming to you. The Gemara continues. Palga de kamoidi lahu shakli. 3/6 that the suffix is moida, that goes to them, the Bnei Yavam. Tilsa de ka modulei shakal. The third, tilsa is a third, or 2/6 that they, the Bnei Yavam or moida, concede go to the suffix he takes. Posh lahu danka. There remains 1/6. That is that over that you have the argument. Have a moment of muta b'suffix v'cholkim. So that 1/6 and then would be divided, and 1/6 is made of 2/12. So the suffix would get 1/12. The other 12th would have to be divided between the 2 brothers, each one getting 1/24. A new case. Sabo v'yavam b'nichsei suffix. So you can use if you want to use charts, you can refer to the charts we have already. You have the Saba, that's Yankov, and the Yavam, his son Shimon, are coming to argue over the properties of the suffix. The suffix in this case he dies. The grandfather is going to claim that the suffix is not Shimon's son. He's the son of the other brother. And in the absence of Reuven having any children, and the suffix is dead now, so the grandfather, or Reuven's father, inherits. Shimon is claiming the suffix is his own son. And where and as such, the father inherits his son, not a grandfather. Another case number 8. Saba v'sofek b'nichsei Yavam. That would be Yankiv and the Sofek arguing over possession of Shimon's property. The Sofek is claiming that he is Shimon's son, hence entitled to all of that property. The Saba is claiming that you're not Shimon's son, you're Ruvain's son. And right now we're contesting Shimon's property. And therefore it's mine. So each one is laying full claim on Shimon's property. The Sofek claiming he's a son of Shimon, and Yankov claiming that the Sofek is a son of Ruvain. So in these cases 7 and 8, have a momon hamutal b'Sofek v'cholkin. There's equal doubt over here, and as a result, they split.